Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, marking 26 years of peaceful resistance against the Chinese Communist Party. Thousands rallying in America's capital, calling attention to the ongoing persecution of Falun Gong in China, a spiritual practice followed by tens of millions worldwide. U.S. lawmakers joining in support.
We'll continue to stand with the Falun Gong practitioners.
We've got to tell the Chinese government that we're not going to stand for it.
China calling fentanyl America's own problem. This after President Trump signing a tough new law targeting fentanyl traffickers and criticizing China's role in the drug trade. Trump also hinting China could take drastic new steps, including death penalties for fentanyl dealers. Japan, a key U.S. ally in Asia, is sounding the alarm. It says the world is facing the greatest trial since World War II as totalitarian regimes ramp up military expansion. And the U.S. military's highest-ranking officer, General Dan Kane, weighs in on the rising military tensions in Asia.
We need to be able to demonstrate resolve so that we can fight tonight, fight together, and win together.
Before we dive into today's news, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter using the link down below. In tomorrow's edition, we're taking a closer look at countries on the U.S. terrorist radar and their connections to Communist China. It drops Friday morning straight to your inbox. Don't miss it. Standing up to the Chinese Communist Party for nearly 26 years and counting, their peaceful resistance shows no signs of stopping. Thousands of Falun Gong practitioners gathered in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, calling for an end to the ongoing persecution of their faith in China. The State Department and U.S. lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are united in condemning the human rights abuses. Let's take a closer look.
Over 1,000 people have gathered in the nation's capital. They're commemorating the 26th anniversary of a deadly, ongoing persecution in China. That's the persecution of Falun Gong. The yellow, blue, and white are iconic colors for these practitioners to march to. The upbeat music represents the Falun Gong community's solemn resilience amid almost 3 decades of targeted discrimination from the Chinese Communist Party, which began on July 20th, 1999.
We have seen surveillance. We have seen harassment, fines, detentions. We have seen imprisonment and torture, medical neglect, dehumanizing treatment, and even death.
Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual discipline based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Despite the practice being peaceful, it has faced relentless suppression since 1999 when the CCP viewed its growing popularity as a threat.
For myself, I was hung up with rope and beaten simultaneously by several people for several hours. And also was handcuffed around the tree in very cold winter night for several hours.
Lawmakers have called on the CCP to end its campaign to eradicate the spiritual group. Elected officials such as Congressman Pat Ryan have rallied behind the Falun Gong Protection Act to end forced organ harvesting by the Chinese Communist regime.
As I proudly represent the global headquarters of the Falun Gong movement in Dragon Springs, in Orange County, in New York, north of New York City, I've had the privilege of visiting many times, spending time with a whole host of community members and leaders and practitioners, and it is such a special place, not only physically beautiful, but morally and spiritually such a rich and beautiful place.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Alongside the rally, participants also paid tribute to those who lost their lives under the Chinese Communist Party's campaign against the spiritual practice. Several U.S. lawmakers voiced their support for the group.
I will continue to stand with the Falun Gong practitioners, and Chinese government looks at it as a form of threat. I think that's completely wrong.
And I appreciate the attention that's being brought to the horrible things that China does.
On July 20th, 1999, the Chinese Communist Party launched a brutal clampdown attempting to eradicate Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa. This year marks the 26th year of the CCP's persecution.
We've got to tell the Chinese government that we're not going to stand for it.
The House recently passed a bill sanctioning CCP officials involved in forced organ harvesting, a systematic human rights abuse targeting prisoners of conscience in China, primarily Falun Gong practitioners.
They treat their people as if they're disposable assets, and they're not. I mean, all people are created in the image of God. And we need to do everything we can to prevent these types of horrific crimes from taking place.
If we don't call out human rights abuses from a country that is seeking to expand its sphere of influence across the world, it really challenges Americans.
The rally in Washington aims to raise global awareness among Americans about the persecution. It also seeks to expose the Chinese Communist Party's human rights abuses. Participants are calling on the U.S. government to take stronger action. They want the regime held accountable for its malign actions.
I think those are the people who write history. That's what history is written about.
As Congressman Johnny Oszlewski puts it, if no one calls out the Chinese regime's human rights abuses, it will eventually affect all Americans. Next Tuesday on a special episode of China in Focus, 4 Americans with first-hand experience of China's long reach on U.S. soil will share their stories. Stay with us and tune in July 22nd at 9 in the evening Eastern Time. President Trump signed a bipartisan bill Wednesday that toughens prison sentences for fentanyl traffickers. He highlighted heartbreaking stories of fentanyl victims and blamed China for aiding the smuggling of drugs into the U.S. But China pushed back, saying fentanyl is America's problem, not theirs. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has the details.
At a moving ceremony featuring families holding pictures of loved ones they had lost to drugs, President Trump signed into law a bipartisan legislation that would classify all fentanyl-related substances, including its copycat versions, as Schedule I drugs, which carry the harshest penalties.
It's a big deal, as they will tell you, meaning anyone caught trafficking these illicit poisons will be punished with a mandatory 10-year minimum sentence in prison.
Fentanyl, which is 50 times stronger than heroin, has become the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. Trump invites to the podium parents who lost their children to the drug to share their stories.
We did everything right, but one pill, one mistake given by a friend under peer pressure took his life. For 4 years, we felt ignored. But you've changed that.
To say thank you, Mr. President, for stopping the border crossings. Full stop, mic drop.
President Trump also called out China's role in facilitating the smuggling of fentanyl into the U.S. China remains the largest source for fentanyl precursors, which are then used to make fentanyl in Mexico before they end up in the U.S. Trump stressing his tariffs as a punishment.
China delivers much of the fentanyl. Some people would say all of it. They deliver it into Mexico and even into our own country. We have a 20%, so they pay billions of dollars in damages for what they've done.
While President Trump says he believes China will tighten control, the communist regime has a track record of making promises without taking solid actions, especially when it comes to fentanyl. A congressional report last year accused China of directly subsidizing the manufacturing and the export of illicit fentanyl materials. And that's before the president, upon taking office earlier this year, accused China of actively expanding the business of poisoning our citizens. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Trump also said he had imposed a 20% tariff on Chinese imports, quote, as a penalty for China's role in supplying fentanyl to the U.S. He added that he expects China to begin handing out the death penalty for fentanyl manufacturing and distribution. China responded on Thursday. A spokesman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry said fentanyl is a problem for the U.S., not China, and that the responsibility lies with the U.S. itself. Japan, one of Washington's closest allies in Asia, is calling on the international community to wake up to what it calls the greatest trial since the end of World War II. In its annual assessment published this week, the Japanese Defense Ministry voiced deep concerns over Chinese military expansion and its aggressive actions in the Indo-Pacific. The 2025 Japan Defense White Paper says China has been rapidly ramping up defense spending, boosting its military power in both size and capability. The paper also highlighted Beijing's increased activity in the East China Sea, including near the disputed Senkaku Islands as well as in the Pacific. Last week, top military officials from the United States, South Korea, and Japan met in South Korea to discuss the growing threats from China and North Korea. U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, said both countries are undergoing an unprecedented military buildup.
We need to be able to demonstrate resolve, to be entrepreneurial and proactive in our partnerships, to make sure that our leaders at every echelon understand and trust each other, and to take the best available combat capability and capacity between our three nations so that we can fight tonight, fight together, and win together.
About 90,000 American troops are stationed in Japan and South Korea. Their presence is part of the U.S.'s ongoing efforts to deter nuclear-armed North Korea and China. Coming up, in Taiwan's capital city, preparations for war are underway. An annual air raid exercise is training citizens to respond to a potential Chinese missile attack.
The exercises between the U.S., Japan, France, Great Britain, they are very, they're very secure. We're very, we are not worried.
Ahead of the U.S. tariff hike, Chinese exporters rushing to redirect shipments to other countries, giving a temporary boost to economic figures. But beneath the surface, underlying weaknesses and risks still threatening China's economy. And members of the UK Parliament are sounding the alarm over China's long reach. A recent seminar revealed China targeting a faith group on UK soil with fake bomb threats and even a physical attack on a woman.
As far as they're concerned, they have their right to go after any person that they think is essentially and should be back in China being persecuted. And so they'll follow that persecution here in the United Kingdom.
More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Preparations for war in Taiwan are underway. The capital city, Taipei, held its annual air raid exercise on Thursday, aimed at preparing citizens for a potential Chinese missile attack. Sirens wailed as people took shelter indoors across the city. Here's more.
Sirens sounded in the early afternoon to mark the start of the mandatory street evacuation drills. Towns and cities across northern Taiwan effectively shut down for 30 minutes in Taipei's shopping district. Tourists were caught off guard by the alarms as they were ushered indoors and underground to take cover.
Yes, because we don't have drills like this back in the Philippines. We just have earthquake drill, but about missiles, so it's quite alarming to read about that, and then quite nervous.
Actually, there's a lot of issues here. China wants to claim Taiwan, but the exercises between the U.S., Japan, France, Great Britain, they are very, we're very secure. We're very, we are not worried because we are secure. We know that.
China views Taiwan as its own territory and has not ruled out taking the democratically governed island by force. Over the past several years, China has ramped up military pressure on its neighbor. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te rejects Beijing's sovereignty claims and says only the Taiwanese people can determine their own future.
Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC has posted a record profit for the second quarter. Widely seen as the world's largest and most advanced AI chip manufacturer, TSMC works with big companies like Apple and Nvidia. TSMC plays a key role in the ongoing geopolitical race between the U.S. and China. Let's zoom in.
Taiwan's TSMC, the world's main producer of advanced AI chips, posted record profit in the second quarter, It saw forecast beating growth of 60% and noted that demand for artificial intelligence was continuing to grow. It said it expects another robust leap in revenue for the third quarter, but was cautious about the outlook later in the year. That was partly due to the unknown impact of US tariffs. The firm added that it would also be greatly affected by the strengthening of the Taiwan dollar. TSMC said net profit for April to June climbed to $13.5 billion, marking its fifth straight quarter of double-digit growth. The company's customers include Apple and Nvidia. In March, it announced plans for a $100 billion US investment at a White House event with Donald Trump. That's on top of $65 billion pledged for 3 plants in the state of Arizona.
China's economy saw a boost in the second quarter, driven by exporters rushing to send products overseas ahead of U.S. tariff hikes. But analysts warn of underlying weaknesses and growing risks that could increase pressure on China's economy. Here are the details.
China's economy has showed GDP growing 5.2% on the year over the April to June quarter. That was slightly down on the previous period, but beat analyst forecasts. The numbers were helped as factories rushed out shipments to take advantage of the current trade truce with the US. But that leaves investors bracing for a weaker second half as exports cool off. Other figures released the same day also show parts of the economy still under strain. Retail sales growth slowed sharply in June, hitting its lowest level since the first months of the year. The country's ailing property sector also remains a drag, with home prices falling at their fastest pace in 8 months. Such negatives mean Beijing will remain under pressure to do more stimulus measures. Policymakers have already ramped up infrastructure spending and consumer subsidies in response, alongside steady monetary easing. Now investors will be closely watching a meeting of the ruling Politburo in late July for any signs of action. Some expect the government to boost spending if future data points to a downturn. But with deflation entrenched and domestic demand weak, it won't be easy to drive renewed activity. That could make hitting the official goal of about 5% growth this year a daunting task.
China's property slump shows no signs of easing. New data reveals home prices fell in June at the fastest pace in 8 months. Adding to the challenge, China is also facing deflation, weak consumer demand, and ongoing geopolitical tensions with the U.S. Now we turn to Britain, where members of parliament are raising concerns about China's repression on UK soil. A seminar held in Parliament Tuesday focused on the CCP targeting the spiritual discipline Falun Gong in Britain, including fake bomb threats and a physical attack on a woman. Calls are growing for the government to take action. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson reports from London.
British politicians, a leading human rights lawyer and victims discussed in a parliamentary seminar the Chinese Communist Party's accelerating transnational repression. That's the Chinese regime's growing campaign to persecute people beyond its own borders, including in Western nations such as Britain, and includes actions ranging from threats of violence, bomb scares, and even to physical attacks on individuals.
Outside Parliament, Falun Gong practitioners meditate and peacefully raise awareness about the CCP's persecution against them. Since 1999, they have been tortured and killed in China just for their faith and choice to live by the values of truth, compassion and forbearance. British lawmaker Lord David Alton said practitioners have been targeted outside China too.
Examples in the seminar today included a lady who was physically assaulted outside the British Museum. It was a heart-rending story. She's still living with the consequences of that assault. This is intolerable in the United Kingdom.
The lady was left with fractured vertebra and significant damage to her spinal nerves. International human rights lawyer David Matus said the CCP has intensified the repression abroad since 2022. According to information leaked in June 2024 from China's Ministry of Public Security, the regime's stated goal is to, quote, fully eliminate Falun Gong worldwide.
The governments have to be aware of the problem, and I would say there's not a great awareness right now of the problem.
The seminar heard the CCP is also targeting the world-renowned classical Chinese dance group Shen Yun, which was founded by Falun Gong practitioners as a way to revive traditional Chinese culture and show the real China before communism. In February this year, 3 British theatres received fake bomb threats seeking to cancel the shows, though police found no real threat and the shows continued as scheduled. British Member of Parliament Mary Rimmer watched Shen Yun perform in London.
So it's here in London, and people should go and see it, but the threats just want to stop them operating. They don't want the story to be known.
And the former leader of the UK's Conservative Party and British Member of Parliament Ian Duncan Smith said the reality is that the CCP does not care what country its targets are in.
As far as they're concerned, they have their right to go after any person that they think is essentially and should be back in China being persecuted. And so they'll follow that persecution here in the United Kingdom.
He said the government must crack down on any transnational repression on UK soil and expel the individuals responsible for it. The Joint Committee on Human Rights is due to release a report on transnational repression in the UK. British lawmaker Lord Alton said this will be an opportunity for the government to say what positive actions it will take. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.